Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Spam Robocallers. This is the U.S. credit card company calling with important information. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Exactamax. For all of your planetary destruction needs, think Exacamax. Axe. There's an extra axe in there. Welcome, everybody, to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And this is a film podcast, generally for movie nerds. We have a big disparate audience. And I'm using big relative to zero. we do have listeners, and not everyone's like what we do. We're filmmakers. You're a full-time producer and musician. I just do video stuff, working on, trying to move into bigger arenas for sure. And this kind of serves as a jumping off point to learn and get better at this whole process. But yeah, I mean, not everyone is interested in being like an actor or filmmaker. And so, some people are creatives for sure. I think we have a lot of creative listeners. And I would be surprised if everyone isn't a creative in some form or fashion. That would definitely surprise me. But we have a lot of film lovers. I think if you tune in regularly, you'll come to find that, we really love movies, and we cover, a lot, but we do tend to hit a lot of sci-fi and horror, and all the better if you can combine sci-fi and horror. That's going to be a happy place for me. But all that aside, that lays right. We have an extra thing we're doing at the end of this episode, so I think we're going to cut short our normal preamble. And what are we going to cover today?
Today we are reviewing Underwater. So if you haven't watched this film, pause the episode, go watch it, because there's going to be spoilers all over the place in this film.
Yep. I know what everyone's thinking. That was the smoothest segue in the history of the Pestle. And you're correct. You're so right.
They can't all be butter, my man.
That's the truth. That
the magic of editing, right? How many times have I screwed up all the names? I am not capable of reading the names one time through. I think I did it one time, and we had a guest on. I think it was it when
it was burning.
Dave was on?
It was burning.
And I just blew through some of the hardest names that we've ever had. And I just blew through it.
Yeah, because
and every other time, I screw them all up completely. I don't know.
It's one of the best things. It's one of my favorite things, because I'm like, yeah, I would not do any better. So it's not like there's a right choice between us, and it's always just kind of hilarious. And that episode in particular was extra hilarious because of how well you did it, or at least how well we perceived that you did it.
Well, no, because I stopped afterwards and I said, I crushed that. Like, I was well aware halfway through that, wow, this is going awkwardly well.
And it's like a no-hitter, right? You're like in the bottom of the seventh, and you still haven't, thrown an error or anything. And you're just like, don't say anything. Don't mess us up.
Exactly.
So yeah, we are going to cover Underwater. We'll talk about a few things. Cinematography, I have just very, very minor notes on that. But I have a pretty deep dive into the story and writing. Norah as an action hero. We'll definitely touch on creating tension, one of the things this movie kind of excels at. And at some point, probably early on in the breakdown, I will go into how Kristen Stewart could probably save us from a robot uprising. And other such stuff, and things and stuff.
Like in real life? We have a robot uprising.
Correct. It's not underway yet, but if that were to happen, I think Kristen Stewart could be used as a litmus test. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see where we're going with this. All right. So A quick synopsis of the film. A crew of oceanic researchers working for a deep-sea drilling company try to get to safety after a mysterious earthquake devastates their deepwater research and drilling facility located at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Directed by William Eubank. Screenplay by Brian Duffield and Adam Cozad. Cinematography by Bojan Bazelli. Starring Kristen Stewart as Noah Price. Vincent Cassel as Captain Lucien. Mamoudou Athie as Rodrigo, TJ Miller as Paul, and Jessica Henwick as Emily.
What is that thing?
All I know is that it was eating a dead body and then it came at me.
Em, what are you doing?
I'm just looking for
No! See?
looking for its mouth.
Is it still alive?
No,
Because
just...
I would kill it.
I think I just touched a nerve.
Norah, how much further do we have?
200 meters away from the bottom.
It doesn't have any eyes.
How are they attracted to the light?
Oh my god, look at those.
Maybe they're like moths.
Underwater moth.
It's like talons. I think this might be a new species.
Do we get to name it?
I shot it. I'm naming it.
I've never seen sea life like this down there. Unless we bored into a hydrothermal pocket. If it was sustained heat that could support life.
Serious? Everybody.
So, I mean, there wasn't really any amazing clips to play, but because everything that's fun about this is kind of on the screen.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw this together for the first time, not knowing almost anything about it, other than it takes place underwater and people are in danger. That's, I think, about as much ammunition as we had walking into this. Second time through, what's your take on this, man?
Yeah, second time through is just as enjoyable. It's fantastic. I love it. I could watch it again right now. I thought that, I mean, I remember being in the theater and thinking, whoa, they get straight into the action. There is no bullshit, no like messing around. They're straight into it. From the very beginning, there's an explosion and they're all about it. So, and we have to solve some problems and we see people die right away and there's cost to something immediately. And I completely buy Kristen Stewart for who, in her role. I mean, I've always thought she's a fantastic, turn that down. I've always thought that she's a fantastic actress anyway, but this role just really is a good example of that. And I think that she does so. I think one of the reasons is she does a lot with a little bit. Like she has really good facial control, and that's really important for a role like this, where it's not really about what you're saying. It's more important about how you're saying it and what's behind that, like the actual fear being behind that or the determination being behind it or whatever. And she just did amazing. The casting was fantastic because there were a couple of players that were, B-list players that, unexpectedly got killed off, pretty quick. And like in surprising ways. I mean, just like the one, I forget his name, but the one guy whose helmet implodes.
Oh, Rodrigo. Yeah.
Rodrigo, yeah. Well, he dies. That was completely unexpected because he was the one that she saves first, by closing the door. And so we're thinking, okay, he's going to be with her for a while at least. Not really. Anyway, so yeah, that, and then the comedy is so perfect. I mean, I just the first time, who is it? Paul?
Yeah.
Is it Paul who's the funny? Yeah. So his first line is so perfect. I texted you while I was watching the film, the line, Oh, what was it? Hold on. You beautiful flat-chested elven creature. It was just so so perfect because she has short hair in this film. She's not busty. I don't know, who cares, but I'm just saying, like, it was just like so on the nose and perfect to break the tension that had been there from the very beginning. The way that they use that comedic break is just flawless and fantastic. And they keep it steady throughout while he's alive. So he's always cracking jokes. He's always making you laugh. So even when, like in the scene you just played, where, they have this baby on their ship and then all the power goes out on this little tiny pod, my immediate response is, oh my God, I can't breathe. I'm going to die. But it's just, he still has this funny element. Anything he says is hilarious. And so it breaks that tension somehow. So then when he finally does die, there is nothing to break the tension from then on for the rest of the film. And so you're like, okay, here we go. Now we're in it. There's, nobody else is going to amuse me now, so to introduce comedy when we don't expect it, to keep it going and then take it away when we're expecting to continue to have it, is just genius. It's just brilliant writing. And the way that they kill these characters off is also brutal and shows you, without showing you too much of the monster, shows you the power of the monster. And so which is a classic. I think a lot of our favorite monster films are like that, where we see the essence of the monster without seeing the monster. Attack the Block is a good example, and that you love, that you turned me on to. And this does that so well. I mean, we do see the monster. We're not saying that you can't show it, but show its ability or its danger without showing it, even if we know what it looks like. Like, that's scary, So yeah, there's a ton of tension, ton of release, ton of comedy, when necessary, and not when not, and good cost to things. Like, everything has a cost. There's a lot of lives lost, and I don't know that there's necessarily lessons. Maybe there is, but it doesn't. I'm not looking for that. It's like a pure popcorn movie that you sit down and you just get enveloped in. We're never not under the water. We're always under the water. We're never on the surface. There's no getting out of here, right? We're trapped in there with them. So we want them to get out too, because we don't have that release of, cutting to the ship on the surface in the storm or something. We don't have that release. So, which is, different from other movies like this, like The Abyss or whatever, where, you can cut to the surface and you have that, I can take a breath. There is no breathing here. And so I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about it. In fact, it's very hard for me to find anything that I don't love about it. I was never taken out of the story the entire time. I thought the special effects were really fantastic. The practicals were really, they did practical when they could, and yeah, it was wonderful.
Agreed on all fronts, man. Holy crap. Yeah, I mean, even just looking at that clip with the little baby monster, I'm like, man, I mean, it looks practical, and it's beautiful. Like, that's a really beautiful, character design and execution, which is really hard to do. I feel like most films do their best to not show you as cleanly as they show you whenever they plop it on the table on this like backlit white light table, and it's just perfectly visible. But yeah, in every way, man, great point about we never cut to the surface. Like, we are in the same pressure, it's breathless the entire time, and we're kind of identifying with them every step of the way. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, just the breathlessness of it, I really appreciated that. We're not really wasting any moments. Every time they're doing something, it's for a purpose. It's with a reason. Like, okay, we have a goal. Obviously, survival is the main ultimate goal, but every step that they're taking is to ensure their survival. And they take risks in order to, accomplish their goals. And man, yeah, I mean, we probably get 45 to 60 seconds into the film before the first explosion, after the credits. And it's just from there on, like, you are holding your breath waiting for the next event. And they come pretty rapid fire. And even the moments that they kind of have to, gather themselves again, you are anticipating something's happening. Because like that scene we played, they're making their way down to the bottom of the trench. And you're just like watching the numbers, because as he asks her, how far do we have left to go? And you're looking at the meter read, 205, 204, 203. And when you see countdowns like that, it creates this little bit of anxiety. Like, we're so far away and it's moving so slow. It's not possible we're going to get there. And of course, that's exactly when it halts and, the next new mission kind of unfolds. But it's just perfect, man. The pacing in this thing is absolutely beautiful. This is a absolutely perfect, 95-minute use of 95 minutes. You never feel left out. You never feel confused. You always understand the stakes, particularly because the stakes are so, easy to understand and graspable. It's just, you always are right there with the characters. I was just super pleased with this, because you don't know when you walk into a horror film called Underwater that takes place underwater, you don't know how tropey they're going to get and how obvious the hits are going to be. I think we had seen, some of the trailers, and we knew it was going to look beautiful. Like they had some really great slow-mo shots in the trailer, and you're like, oh yeah, I mean, at a minimum, we're going to get a couple cool shots. And so you don't really expect much more than that. And this movie it did a great job of containing all the action. Emotion's not really there. It's pretty light and pretty ineffectual on that front, but I didn't really tune in for that. And so walking out necessarily without it, I didn't care. I feel like I got what I wanted, which was a roller coaster, some thrills, and some really cool shots. Same, man. I was super pleased, and I am literally watching it right now, just because.
And how about just the quality of the storytelling is fantastic. I mean, from the very beginning of meeting, from the very beginning of meeting the captain, we find out he's a father and he has a daughter, and she's like, "Why didn't you go? You have a daughter." Right. And then later on, when she's in the other, I guess the second, submersible or area, I don't even know where to call it.
Some kind of locker room thing.
Some locker room thing. She sees I think she, I don't know, maybe didn't know it, but she sees she finds out that his daughter had died already.
It's like this little funeral memorial.
Yeah, it's like a funeral invitation, memorial invitation or something. Yeah. Which is like, they did not have to do that. Yeah. Right? I think, and I wonder, why would they do that? Would they do that for us so that we don't, as the viewer, we're not thinking that he sacrificed himself and is going to not be there for his daughter now? Is it to make us understand that no, I don't know. I don't know why they did it, but I'm glad they did.
Yeah, same. I think it, on the one hand, kind of solidifies their somewhat father-daughter relationship that they kind of were building towards.
Yeah. That's what it felt like from the beginning of when she comes to him.
Yeah. And then with her, she had lost her fiance. And so I think between those two things, both of those characters make intentional sacrifices. And it kind of gives them an emotional appeal for, I can understand why they were that much more willing. I'm going to save someone. And it's kind of a stand-in for the person that they couldn't save in their own lives.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know? And so that's the best I can kind of reason out of that.
I love that. I think that's totally valid.
Yeah.
But I love how we don't even, they don't give us any exposition we don't need.
Yeah. Yeah.
We didn't need to see the rig being built or everybody going down to the rig or like meet any of the people who had died, right? Or even see the escape pods leaving.
Yeah.
We didn't get to see any of that stuff. We get to the captain after all the escape pods had left and he, you know, quote unquote, saved a bunch of people, even though none of the pods made it, or a lot of them didn't. But we don't even see any of that. None of that. And why would we need to?
Yeah.
Right? But
we hang out with Norah.
Yeah, so many movies would
the entire time. Yeah. Like it's always through her perspective, which is really interesting, especially when you get to that scene when she comes upon Emily, who's dragging Liam, her fiance, and you're kind of confused at first because she's calling to Emily like, Emily, hey, it's me. I'm here. And like Emily speeds up, like, and you're just like, what's going on? And then she tackles her. And finally you begin to realize, oh, she's terrified. She thinks that, you know, Norah was a monster or someone, you know, that was going to hurt her. And so you can start to empathize a little bit and see from Norah's perspective of the way she's being interacted with Emily. Whereas if you had cut to the perspective of Emily, suddenly, I don't know, things get a little bit easier for the viewer. And now we have this kind of dramatic irony that wouldn't pay off because what's the interesting thing about knowing Emily's okay and that she's going to get rescued by Norah, as opposed to seeing everything from Norah's perspective? Like, oh, she's coming on Emily, but Emily's acting weird. Is everything okay with her? Now we have tension of, should we be afraid of, you know, what we're walking up on right now? And then we have this kind of resolution, and then additional perspective of Emily saying, oh my God, I thought you were dead. You know, and suddenly we fill in those blanks. Like you're saying, there's no wasted exposition. It's all just what you need to know. Yeah, I completely agree. Great storytelling for sure.
And they set up a lot of the deaths too really well. Like when Rodrigo dies, you know, we know there's a lot of pressure down there. But even in the opening credits, they give you a lot of little breadcrumb things. And there was one moment, and I had to rewind it because I wanted to see it and I missed it, where they tell you, you know, it's like this many tons per square inch of pressure. And that's insane. Yeah. Like to think about that. Like it's like 4 tons of pressure per square inch down there. So when Rodrigo dies the way he dies, and he basically disintegrates, and like body parts like go floating away, you understand how that could happen, you know, imagining that much pressure. But, you know, it's just a split second in the credits. And if you're not watching, you will miss it. But if you do watch, it's just a little bit of verification of like, oh yeah, that could totally happen. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Anyway.
So I'll jump in through a few things here. There's not a ton at the beginning. Cinematography, obviously, it's a lot of handheld stuff, which just helps ground us, right? It almost gives it this kind of documentary feel as we're kind of panning around. It's shaky, and that's just nice for horror to do in order to make you buy into the fact that we're underground. Like, I think sometimes the more outrageous the location or the setup, the more it benefits to go kind of the handheld route as a method of making you feel immersed in the scene. But to their credit too, it also adds an extra kind of shake or shock to the special effects, right? To help sell the instability and the explosions. And I mean, all the sets are very wet. Like there's just water everywhere, dripping, and at times even the lens has water on it. And so they're constantly trying to immerse you in the same way that they are submersed. And so, as far as story and writing, I really love Norah as an action hero. And I'll try to kind of go not quite beat for beat, but just through some of the moments. Like that opening sequence, she's brushing her teeth. The walls and ceiling suddenly explode around her, right? Water is just imploding the entire place. And she immediately sprints off. Like, she hesitates none. She is off to the races, and she knows exactly where she needs to go. And that's kind of what you want out of an action hero, which is not just determination, but, great decision making and fast on their feet, no pun intended. And so she has to, once she gets to where she's trying to go, she has to shut the door. There's this great moment where she has to shut it and let people die and effectively watch them die, or die herself along with everyone else on the rig. And I want to play through this whole sequence because I really love it. And this kind of also falls under the creating tension setup that I want to talk about. And there's several of those we'll walk through. But for this one, I love the slow delivery of this moment because there's also this urgency and buildup that's going hand in hand. And so it's really well paced to deliver action and the exposition and allowing the moment to settle. It's to me, it's pretty masterful, to be honest. And so we're seeing the people running towards us clearly losing the race against the explosion as they're getting closer, right? The water is absolutely caught up to them and even surpassing them. And she's still, waiting. And so we have Rodrigo right next to her, in her ear, clearly explaining the stakes. You have to close the door or the rig is going to go. And so the explosion is getting closer. That's such a great, anxiety-inducing action shot where the explosion is just kind of climbing towards the camera. That is just gorgeous. I have no idea if that was practical or VFX. My instinct is practical, but I honestly have no idea. It's so well done. And then they cut from that to the exterior shot of the tunnel kind of being crushed and imploding. Boom, 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 boom. And so you have this rhythm that's building. And whenever you kind of create that rhythm, you're creating this anticipation of the finale. And so you can kind of feel it because we're rhythmic creatures, right? We have heartbeats. And so I feel like we're relating that rhythm to our heartbeat and feeling our own heart rate start to speed up. And then from there, we kind of dolly in to her deciding. It's this really small, slow push in. Before she finally, as the noise goes from quieter to louder and louder and louder, then she hits the button, the door closes as the implosion reaches us. And it's great because we kind of settle for a moment, we're safe for a moment. And then it's like, nope, you were a little too late. There's a small price to pay. Boom. And she slowly flies through the air and blacks out. That is such a great sequence. And I think the key to that entire sequence, especially in relation to her being an action hero, was that they let her make the call. Rodrigo didn't get to press the button. He could have. It was right there. He had all the right, and access, but they let her do it. She did what was necessary and she didn't back down. And I think that was absolutely critical for her because for her, she is constantly proactive in fighting for everyone. Right at the end, she punches Emily right in the face in order to save her life. That's a really great, decisive moment that you want out of an action hero. Assaulting a woman in order to save her life is genius, especially even more genius to let that happen through another woman. Because she's not soft, right? She's an action hero. In a way that you don't normally see action heroes. It's really fantastic. And even, her relationship with the captain isn't one of, oh, now I'm with the captain, now it's time to fall in line. Nope. She's going to also tell him when he's screwing up and she's going to give him good advice. And it's a really fun dynamic to watch someone wrestle with the captain in that way. And of course, at the finale, she of course sacrifices herself. Which is, the pinnacle of any action hero is the ability to sacrifice yourself, which is also interesting in conjunction with Rodrigo. And so let's walk through some other moments of them building tension. For one, Rodrigo being a black dude, the only one in this film dying first, might get some eye rolls. For me, I think it works really well because of one of the reasons that you already said, right? And I didn't even write this down. It was just a great observation on your part. him being the first rescued, we do kind of get the impression that, oh, we're forming our team and now he's a key part of this team. And so that, in addition to, it's such a long trope of the black person dying first in the movie that you don't really expect it anymore. I think you kind of get to a point where you expect them to make it all the way through. So to kill him off first kind of plays against, by going with that trope, you're playing against modern day expectations. So I think it's kind of a clever ploy against the audience to say that this is not a safe space. Like this, you don't know what's going to happen next. The other nice thing about killing him particularly was that he was a good person, right? He chose the faulty helmet to save her, which not only makes that moment hurt so much more and cause surprise, but it also kind of goes against any inclination at the previous scene, because he was in her ear saying, you have to kill these people in order to save everyone else. So your inclination may be he's a selfish person, but the exact opposite is true. He's thinking bigger than that. He's trying to save people. And him sacrificing himself in the way that he did kind of underscores that he's not a selfish character, that he is in it for the betterment and trying to look out for everyone else. So in a lot of ways, I think,
oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I you're totally right. And I think that he knew that she was the one that was going to save everyone.
Yeah.
Like if anybody was going to be needed, it would be her. And he would have been saved, not have been saving. So he made that decision knowing that if I don't do this, then I think we all might die.
Yeah.
Same situation as when he was telling her to hit the button.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice. And so that sequence itself is pretty fun, because seeing him select the helmet gives us the tiniest bit of pause, because right as he's doing that, there's this dialogue off screen that's happening about, are there any good helmets left? Select only the good ones. And so as that's being said, he's looking at this helmet and there's a beat. It's brief, but it's there. And it makes us aware that the helmets are a thing to be conscious about. And so we get underwater, and really before the thing even opens, the gate, like we hear this first crack. It's a sonic thing. It's not a visual thing. We can hear the tension and this little pressure kink, and it's basically unnoticed by everybody, except we see the worry on his face. And then that first tiny blast as the door cracks open creates a visible crack in his helmet, which of course creates panic. But the destruction comes before anyone can do anything. It's so fast, and it's very gross. And it creates not necessarily a template, but an expectation. The horror is kind of, it's here. Like, this is going to be a pretty brutal film, because I'm sure there's been other implosions throughout, horror films. But to me, that was one of the greats because it's so effective. And then you also have Emily screaming her head off. And so you feel it and you see it. It's just, and then there's that percussive blast that kind of rips through the water. Like, that whole sequence is really fantastic. And then jumping to another sequence where Paul and Liam, this goes more into creating tension. Paul and Liam are outside, right after that scene we played, or it's right before that scene where they're out, inspecting what's going on out here. Is this body like alive or not? Because they're looking for a guy. And so they're out there looking for this guy, and they come upon the dead body and they see it, and now they're looking at something else. And it's at this point where Nora's had enough. She's like, okay, you know what? Just come back. Don't check it out. Just come back. And of course, Paul is like, no, I'm going to take a closer look. and so that's really, really good, because in horror films, rejecting good advice creates tension in the audience, because now we have an advocate for reason who is voicing our thoughts, which is always, don't go through that door kind of stuff. And so this whole dynamic creates a foreshadowing of something bad, because it's kind of a rule that good advice that's ignored should come at a price. And so that in itself starts creating foreshadowing and tension in the viewer. And of course, they find this monster floating around, and that adds more to the tension. but they ultimately bring this dead monster baby back inside. And what I love about this sequence is this is our first encounter of the monster. We see it dead really before we even see it alive, which is really nice because we can see what it's capable of, making us more afraid of it, right? She's kind of analyzing it and she's seeing all these weird teeth and it feels very real now. And I really love that, allowing the biologist to kind of speculate on its origins. They're grounding the universe scientifically, like they're giving it some kind of scientific impetus, which creates more buy-in for the viewer. And then, of course, Paul has this line, "This better not be some 20,000 leagues under the sea shit, man." Of course, it's that and also much, much worse than that. And then that leads into the 52-minute mark where we finally have the first real kill, where Paul dies. Because there's this great sequence, right, where they're all through this underwater tunnel and now they're waiting for Paul to come through. And so he's not responding and he's not advancing. And so they finally decide we're going to pull on the cord, right? Pull the cord to yank him through. And that is itself like this dramatic thing. He's not talking. And it's this really hard, tense pull as they're yanking on it. We're expecting a bloody stump. Like nothing good ever happens out of this scenario. And so the expectation is bloody stump. And of course he comes through and he's fine. And you're like, okay, get his helmet off. Like, oh, wow. Okay. Everything's good. And then of course something starts pulling him back, which immediately ramps all the tension back up. Trying to get his helmet on and his leg gets ripped off. And this is so beautiful. Blood fills the suit. Horror has landed. We're now officially fighting more than the sea. We're now at war with undersea monsters. And to your point, like killing Paul kills the lighthearted mood that, so now we feel the weight so much more without the comedy. That alleviation is perfect. I think you said it so well, like introducing it, allowing us that escapism, and then taking it away, heightens it that much more. And throughout the film, they do a great job of like growing the threat, right? Let's make life harder, not easier. And so it starts off, with the baby, and from there on, it only gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's, like unseemly. Like this, what else is down there? Like, what birthed this thing? And we'll certainly get to that, cause I have my own theory about it. And so it starts off with one monster. Okay, is it just this thing? Are there two? Okay, it's smaller, then big enough to like swallow them whole. And as they keep proceeding, everything kind of gets more imposing. And so as they reach the goal line, right, they're trying to get to the drill itself. And as they get there, they now are encountering an entire horde of them in between them and their goal. And so the finish line is scarier and now far more impossible than it's ever been before. And that's, of course, just genius. You don't want it to get easier. Like, oh, we'll climb the hill and it's all, coasting from here. No, like make it more ridiculous. And I love this because right as they're, Norah and Emily kind of buckle down, trying to save Liam's lazy butt as they're dragging him through. And it's them figuring it out, and as they're halfway through, they wake one up and it swallows her whole. And it's so good because she's getting eaten, quite literally, and she has to fight through it. Help isn't coming. She is, once again, the only character that is going to save herself, especially at this point in the story where, she shoots, I don't know, is it just a flare?
It's a flare.
It felt like so much more, but
it's a big flare.
It's a very big flare. Okay, that's fair. That's a fair flare. And so she like blasts through the thing, and then we wake them all up. But at this point, they go away, and we're like, we begin to realize that was only just a fraction of the real enemy. Which is revealed to be a sea monster. Now, is it Cthulhu? That's kind of the ongoing theory. I don't agree, and I'll get to who and what I think it is here in a moment. But whether or not it's Cthulhu, I haven't read H.P. Lovecraft, So I don't know if this movie really says or gives us any indication that it could be Cthulhu. I really don't think it is. There's no one definitely says anything about Cthulhu. And I don't know enough about his backstory to see if any of those signs. What I do think, and this kind of leads me into one of the final sections here. What is this all about? What is this movie really about? I think it's kind of all over the place. There's no real hard landing here. Right? You have the Jules Verne reference, the 20,000 Leagues. You have an Alice in Wonderland reference. Actually, you have two, because there's also something written on someone's back that says "We're all mad here," which I think is a reference to the Mad Hatter. You have, kind of these fiancés and familial deaths, along with Emily and Liam, being engaged and her saving him to, I don't know, go and be with each other. I don't know. It's very hard to discern. At the beginning, like, she rescues a spider from the sink, which I think was kind of foreshadowing or symbolizing that they're bringing something up from the deep, right? The drill itself, humanity went down into the sea to pull up something scary. And so maybe in that kind of way, the spider, her pulling the spider out of the sink was symbolizing that. But then you get into Tian Industries. It seems like a play on Titan, as in Titans. And if you don't know what Titans are, they were the superiors, the creators of the Olympians, of the Greek gods. So you have the gods, and then above them are the Titans. But even above the Titans are another race. I think it all begins with Gaia, and Gaia created everything. The Prometheus, I forget who, not Prometheus, but these original layers of deities that are even above the Titans, one of which is called Pontus. Now, Pontus is referenced in this movie. Pontus Endeavors is, if you look at their clothing, is, I guess, the name of the deep sea expedition. And Pontus is reference precedes the Titans. Again, Tian maybe being a reference. I'm telling you, this is all very murky territory, but Pontus and Tian seem to be related, at least in the film. And so the Pontus is a reference to the actual deity of the sea itself. And so my theory is that the monster they uncovered is either Pontus itself, or more likely Poseidon. I think they encountered Poseidon, and this is the deep sea god of the sea that they uncovered. And so I don't think it's Cthulhu. I think everyone's got it wrong. Now maybe the writers will come out and say, no, it was Cthulhu. If so, that's fine. They totally forgot to insert it into their movie, and so I would need them to actually do that for them to get credit for it. And my deep, snark aside, that's my theory. I think it's either Pontus or Poseidon. Yeah. So beyond that, the narration doesn't really go anywhere. Like, the opening is this whole monologue about there's only awake and dreaming, and it's not easy to tell apart. I dream about the first thing he ever said to me, and we come to later figure out that she's talking about her fiance who's deceased. He didn't believe in time, only moments. He was a glass half full type. I preferred empty. There's a comfort to cynicism. There's a lot less to lose. I mean, to me, that's indicating there's some depression there and some hopelessness. But at the end, right, she says, it's really lonely in the dark, so let's light it up. And, she detonates everything. And so to me, it's, this attempt to put a button on her journey. And it's fine. I mean, for what it is, I just don't think it really adds up to much more than that, than just a moment on the screen. I don't think it really helps tell a bigger conversation about love and death and sacrifice. When, I don't know, maybe it could have. I'm okay that it doesn't. I don't think it does. And I'm okay with that. I think it still is an effective kind of letting us into her inner life and that kind of thing. Because regardless, it's still a really fun ride, and that's not what I wanted coming out of this movie. And so I think it totally works and is totally fine as just a connective tissue more than some kind of actual embodiment of a thing. And also, regardless, I like that this was a more pure man versus nature and to some degree, man versus self, which often go hand in hand. But this never becomes a man versus man. And I love that. Everyone is fighting for each other. And that's not always common in horror films. Usually there's some degree of selfishness that comes through horror films. And it's all about, people trying to save themselves. And here it's all about them trying to save each other. And that's really refreshing and beautiful as a means of, thinking about humanity. My last point is the last thing I want to talk about is okay, so I'll preface this whole spiel with Todd and I wouldn't say we've ever made a point of it, but internally I think we make a point to never objectify anybody on screen. Like we've never had this conversation. We've never said, hey, don't talk about, how sexy or hot or whatever XYZ person is. We've never had that conversation. I think it just kind of flows out of who we want to be known as, to the public, Joe Public. And so we've never once pointed out in any unequal or, kind of overbearing way how hot someone is on screen. But with that in mind, give me a little slack and grace because my God, Kristen Stewart burns the screen up in this movie. It's impossible to not watch this movie and think, oh yeah, Kristen Stewart's hot. Like she's blazing. To the point, and this gets to my shtick, which is, okay, let me just take you back to World War II. As all great modern things begin in World War II. Like, we were invading Europe, right? And at night, you would not necessarily always know who's who. And there was like a password. And so if you were in a trench and someone walked up on you, you would say flash and they would say thunder. And that way you knew, okay, this is an American. This guy's on my side. I can trust this person. Now imagine in, 2 years, there's a robot uprising. And we have to know, is this person human or not? I think the password at that point might be like, hey man, underwater, Kristen Stewart, so hot. Okay, you're safe.
Oh God.
And so that's our protection. Like, we need some humanistic quality to differentiate ourselves from the robots or aliens, as it may be. You never know.
Either way, or both.
Either way. But no, I think it actually goes a little bit beyond just, her being, sexy or hot, or I think it also helps in the sense that you make someone really attractive on screen. It also makes you want to root for them that much more. Like, being, attracted to someone helps you root for them, and now you want them to succeed. And so I think it helps a little bit with emotional investment on the part of the viewer. And so it's not for waste. I don't think it's pure, like, whatever you want to call it, exploitation. Which is funny because she's wearing more than you see people on a beach. But at the same time, it just kind of screams in this film, hot.
Yeah. She's in her underwear half the time as well. It's funny because at the same time of, watching this movie and thinking, wow, like she's gorgeous. It wasn't, it was like a normal, wow, that's a really pretty woman, right? It wasn't like a, what's her name in Transformers?
Megan Fox.
Megan Fox, where she's just,
right.
Let's just put the hottest girl we can in this movie for no, like, just to be hot, right?
Yeah, just to sell tickets.
It wasn't like Yeah, it wasn't like that. And it was necessary too, because whenever she was in her underwear at the beginning, but she had just finished, I guess, a shower and she was brushing her teeth. And then all this happened. She didn't have time to put on pants, Yeah. So, but then, or did she have put on pants? I don't even remember. I don't think so. She was going to put on her shoes.
At some point she put on sweats.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. At some point she had to take them off to put on the suit. Yeah. But everybody had to take off their pants to put on the suit. So it was like a normal reason to do something like that. Was it an excuse for everyone to be in their underwear to put her back in her? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I agree. Just absolutely smoking but for a purpose, right? Yeah. And and she had shorter hair too, so it wasn't like this it wasn't like this long flowing hair, busty, curvy, woman to try to be sexual. It was literally, just I think the thing that makes her so attractive in this film isn't that she's in her underwear. That helps for sure, for sure. But it's that she has this, it's the character that she plays and the way that she plays it, right? It's this, if I'm with anyone, I want to be with her, not because she's in her underwear, because I want to live and she's going to be the one to save me. And she plays that so well. But yeah, just,
burns up.
I would watch it again right now. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's funny because we're like breaking out in hives having this conversation.
I know, right? We got to be careful. Yeah. Just to take a step back on your Cthulhu
sure.
suggestion, there was an interview that I found of the director and William Eubank, and he said this was never designed to be a Cthulhu movie. Nice. So it was, the original design was more squid-like, but when they started to actually create the monster after the filming, and basically it says that they took almost 2 years to try to develop it. It kept changing. And so finally they kind of modeled it after what they called the old one, which is another
H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah. H.P. Lovecraft. Thank you. Style monster of like you said, the monster of all monsters kind of thing. And one of the reasons they did that, they did it the way ended up being this kind of design is so that you could see all of the little crawlers on him better. And you could see that, they live on, all the smaller monsters live on the big monster. Right. And with a squid, more like of a squid-like monster, it's hard to see all of those. And it's not as scary.
Skeleton. Yeah.
Right. It's not as scary because you can't really see a mouth, and you can see this thing's mouth for sure. So yeah, and if you look at photos of that, you can kind of tell like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see where that was, where that thinking was. But yeah, so you're spot on with that.
Nice.
Good job.
Yeah. I feel good because I'm sure if you Google it, everyone's calling it a Cthulhu. Nice. And it's nice to buck the trends, man.
And be right.
Well, cool. I think that's about all I had. Let me rack my brain.
Yeah.
Here, but yeah, I think that sums it up. Más o menos.
I mean, I honestly want to give it a 10. There is nothing about this movie that I didn't like, or that I felt like I was pulled out. I'm going to give it a 9.5 just because, you got to reserve the 10.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Today I'm feeling pretty generous, and I think I might just give it a 10 because it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
At the same time as being nerve-wracking and brutal and, emotional at the same time. And you love all the characters. The writing is brilliant. The directing is fantastic. The cinematography and the CGI is amazing. And yeah, just it's fantastic.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm going to land on a 9. Basically the same reasons. I would just want a little bit more emotional resonance on it. There's some there, and it's not like I don't care. And I love the final shot being watching Norah still be alive, as you know, she's the timelessness that kind of plays into when you're facing death, time slows down. That's one of the things they say in the movie. And so we're kind of watching her last moments alive, and it's nice to end with her alive, still on screen, even if we know that, you know, that's her last moment. But yeah, 9 is, for a horror film, I don't foresee many 7s and 8s, and I've seen a lot of horror films, and most of them don't even get to 7. Like, so
Yeah.
9 is exceptional for sure. 9 or 10 is damn impressive. Nice. What you gonna recommend this week?
Yeah. So this week I'm gonna stick. Did you know that TJ Miller's name is Todd Joseph?
No. That's surprising.
That's my name.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, like, you just think TJ, like, obviously it means something, but I never think it would be Todd or Joseph, right? Anyway, crazy. A small world. I'm going to recommend Deadpool 2. Another TJ Miller film. And he's hilarious in this movie. I mean, everybody is. It's fantastic. So
nice. I'm going to stick with horror films. If you want something that's not as breathless but still striking, and if you have not yet seen The Witch, I would highly recommend watching that one. It's fantastic. I've been studying it lately on my own, just as a method of structure. And between Underwater and The Witch, I think there's a lot of great horror structure going on both of those. So check out The Witch by Robert Eggers. And so stay tuned. Next week, we are going to be taking a dip way back and cover Fire in the Sky.
all right.
Yeah. We had
Nice.
a podcaster request for Fire in the Sky, so we'll dive in there. That podcaster being Todd Joseph, apparently.
Yeah, right.
And don't forget to subscribe, review, leave us a note if you want us to talk about a thing. I've come to find out that apparently we have like several listeners in the Macon, Georgia area, and so if y'all want to gang up and like request something, you know, feel froggy and leap. And so if you want to leave a note on this episode in particular, especially with my robot uprising theory, you know, that's highly encouraged. You can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/underwater.
Fantastic. We'll leave you with the quote of the day from Jacques Cousteau. If we were logical, the future would be bleak indeed. But we are more than logical. We are human beings, and we have faith, and we have hope, and we can work. It's beautiful. Wow.
He was amazing. Just as, you know, an ambassador to the sea. Growing up, you couldn't not. I don't know how much I actually watched of Jacques Cousteau, but everyone knew who Jacques Cousteau was, you know, when we were kids.
Yeah.
And he has this other quote that's brutal and absolutely honest, which is, "Water and air, the two essential fluids on which all life depends, have become global garbage cans." And it's so accurate.
Wow.
And
my God.
And I like butting it up against this other quote, you know, that, you know, the future would be bleak if we were just logical, but we're more than that. You know, we're people, and we have faith and hope, and we are capable. And so, you know, watching something like Underwater, and they're kind of exploring this whole idea of, have we gone too far? Are we digging too deep? And they don't like hammer home some of these ideas about, you know, pulling energy out of the earth or what have you, but it's there lightly. And so I really like this idea that, you know, because we're people, we're never beyond we're never beyond saving. You know, we're always going to be able and capable of fighting, even if it gets worse than we'd like it to be.
Yeah. Man, it's just so beautiful, because it kind of it shows the dichotomy of being logical, which we all try to be, with being faithful, having hope. Those, it makes them separates them, right? Because if you're logical, you're going to do this because it's better for you. You're going to do that because it's better for you. But, you know, if you're more than that, then you can see outside of what's just for you, and you can do, you know, what's best for humanity, right? Or what's best for your neighbor instead of just what's best for you. Because if your neighbor is happy or better off, you know, then society as a whole can be, then you could be better off, and society as a whole can be better off, you know? And that, yeah, so it's a real beautiful way of saying that kind of thing it's a new way of saying that kind of thing, I feel like, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Great quote, man.
Thanks, man.
Love it.
Jacques Cousteau.
Well, this is so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us, Wes. Man, great notes. I really, really enjoyed this, and I enjoyed texting lines
Live
to you.
Live texting, yeah.
Live texting during the film. I texted you that first line that Paul says, and you were like, "Wait a minute, I know what that is. I know what that is." You didn't know I was watching the film, and then like what? I think it was like 5 minutes go by, and you're like, "Oh, hi, I know what it is."
So good.
So good. I loved this. Anyway, great review. Thank you guys for sticking around all the way to the end. Again, make sure to subscribe, review, all that good stuff. Make suggestions. We'd love to tackle them. Whatever you'd like.
And if you're a patron, stay tuned because we have a bonus episode coming up very soon.
Love it. Awesome. And thank you for that, by the way. All right, that's it. That's all we got. Make sure you join us next week. We'll be covering Fire in the Sky. Until then, I am Todd.
I am Wes.
Go watch the movies.